So I've got that. Hopefully you guys will see a permission to record. Is it recording?
Yes.
Okay, my little button's gone. So yes, it's recording now. Great. Oh, and there's one in the waiting rooms. I knew it. Okay. It's my pleasure to welcome Dana Spett, MSW, currently in the DSW program here at Rutgers, is the executive director of Power Pony, a nonprofit organization located in Bergen County, New Jersey. So we're very happy to have her here, and she's going to tell you more about herself. But she has a co-presenter, Abigail West, another social worker who love our social workers, and a former MSW intern, and she's a Columbia grad, so she's one of those. We love us all working together. Jennifer Thompson is a Columbia grad, so we do appreciate that. But we also have two other people in the room I'm very proud to have. One is Zori Rogers Rivera, who is currently an MSW student and an intern with them. And there's also Morgan Arnoff Ramapo. How'd you get a name like that? And you're up at Ramapo. You must have been like an intern at BSW intern. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you. I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to be here. I'm going to keep admitting people as they come. And Dana, take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Patricia, for having us. We're going to share our screen. Give us a second. And our disclaimer here is that we're fantastic with horses. Technology is not always our best friend. So we are going to ask, do we share from here?
Yep, we're going to do our slideshow.
And can you see the screen sharing is paused? Resume share. Can you let us know if you see a screen?
We see a black screen. It says loading.
Ah,
all right, let's try that again.
we might just have to load the video.
There we go.
Okay, so you can see a landing slide now with pony legs.
Look at those. They're not cows, but they're wonderful.
They could be cows if you like.
I like that. We were talking earlier about my fondness for cows, but horses are great.
All right, so welcome everyone. Obviously, I would prefer to have you all in person at the farm, but this is the next best. And by way of joining us in this webinar, you have an invitation to come to the farm, so just let us know. So I'm presenting here with Abigail West, who is program director at Pony Power, and is an LSW. She did her social work education at Columbia and was an intern here during that time. And we also have on our panel, we have two of our MSW fieldwork interns, Zori Rogers Rivera, or Zori, and Morgan Aronoff. So Zori is a Rutgers student and Morgan is a Ramapo College student. So we're representing some of the best in our community. We're going to take you on a bit of a journey now, and we're going to start with the sound. Yes, the sound works. It's great.
Do you all hear that?
Okay, so we want you to just take a look at this photo. We kind of want to bring you into the nature and natural world. And as you're looking at this photo, we want to just ask what your senses are doing. Who are the outdoorsy people? How are you feeling? Why do you like the outdoors? And if you can type those into the chat, it'll just help us gauge who's in the audience. If we can see the chat.
So Patricia, if you can see the chat, do you mind sharing responses if we're getting them?
You're muted.
You're muted.
You think after 2 years, makes me feel relaxed, peaceful, and serene. I was going to say calm. I love the smell of green, merging with the environment. I'm getting relaxed already. What else are we seeing, feeling?
Fantastic.
Connecting with Mother Earth, the self. Excellent, Crystal. Thank you. Okay. I think
Right.
that's,
So there is something about the outdoors that's beneficial to human well-being. We can't always pinpoint what, but it's there. So now we're going to get into the heart of our presentation and just talk about our learning objectives. So today we're going to take you through our process of reconnecting with the environment that surrounds our Equine Assisted Services Center. And we saw how incredible results are in not just the well-being of our clients, but the well-being of our team, our horses, and our space. So taking you through our table of contents, we frame our presentation through 5 grounding theories, use case studies to support our approach, and focus on our center's process and inclusion of the environment. We're then going to hear from 2 MSW interns who will share their experience and understanding of field education at an Equine Assisted Services Center. The resources at the end of the presentation are offered through a QR code. So that's actually a nest with a robin's egg that was found at our farm.
The nest is made out of horsehair.
Very cool. So again, we like to frame this as we are social workers and everything we do is grounded in theory. And we're going to share what informs our practice through 5 core theories that undergird our process here at Pony Power. The person and environment theory, the biophilia hypothesis, the strengths-based perspective, systems theory, and finally the One Health initiative. While this is a quick summary of theories, obviously we recommend spending some time with the literature.
Okay, so the first theory that we're going to cover is the person and environment theory. And that is that human behavior cannot be properly understood without consideration of the various dimensions of an individual's environment. The person and environment framework is an early social work concept put forward by Mary Richmond, who's thought to be one of the founders of social work in the United States. You can't understand human behavior without considering the environment that an individual operates in. And so there are various dimensions of the environment: social, political, and familial. The field of social work tends to focus on these relational environments, which are centered on human relationships. But the physical environment is also included in the PIE framework, and it has been proven over and over to have major effects on human health, behavior, and well-being. The centrality of the environment in practice and the returning of our attention to it is at the heart of our presentation today.
And I'm fully acknowledging that Abigail is managing 2 computers right now. So if I'm sitting very quietly. So the next slide is one of my favorites. It's the biophilia hypothesis, which was coined by E.O. Wilson in 1984 and then published by Kellert and Wilson in 1992. And in a nutshell, biophilia speaks to our innate human imperative to connect with nature. Biophilia suggests that in the absence of nature, humans suffer. So our suggestion is to widen the lens to consider beyond humans and animals. And proximity to nature is a biological imperative, and equine assisted centers sit at the intersection of inclusion or absence of access to nature. It's simple but powerful.
Okay, and we are going to talk about the strengths-based perspective now, which is rather than solely focusing on what is wrong in a person's life, the strengths-based perspective considers the positive and functional aspects of behaviors and situations. Every situation has its strengths. This photo is of one of the structures built by participants in Pony Power's fairy forest. The greatest challenge of building a structure like this, and ironically what makes it so much fun, is that the builder must only use objects found in nature. They must be creative, inventive, thrifty, and radically positive in their approach, all while not pilfering materials from a neighboring fairy forest dwelling. I think it's fair to say that most of the people who engage in this activity are unaware that they're tapping into the strengths-based perspective. It's a common pillar in a social worker's problem-solving approach. When a participant is first introduced to the fairy forest, they might think and say, I always hear them, it's wet, I don't have tools, I can't find anything to build with. But as they spend a few minutes assessing their space, regulating with nature, they'll naturally begin to take inventory of what they have. Every environment, in this case, the fairy forest, has resources: tree bark, sticks, pine cones, and long grass. And every human has unique strengths: imagination, fine motor skills, and motivation. It's the collaboration of the resources available and a person's strengths that truly captures the essence of the strengths-based perspective. After exercising the strengths-based perspective, a fairy forest builder now realizes that the dampness made it easier to drive sticks into the ground, and they were able to highlight their strong fine motor skills to use their fingers as tools, and their attention given to nature allowed them to see natural objects as building materials. Now, the builder will have a memory of that time that they exercised all these strengths. And so the positive feedback loop begins, and they'll be more likely to lean into obstacles when confronted with life's challenges. Person and environment, biophilia, the strengths-based perspective, they all come together to support our belief that the environment should be included in equine assisted services and social work fieldwork. Yet there are two more concepts that we'd like you to consider, and I'll hand it over to Dana to share about systems theory and One Health.
This picture is beautiful. It's actually a drone shot above our farm. So our farm is located in Bergen County, as Dr. Finley has shared. And that's our riding arena that indoor riding arena sitting right in the middle of the forest. But we're going to speak for a minute about systems theory, which is basically a group of interacting interdependent parts that form a complex whole that was developed in 1930s by biologist Ludwig von Bertalanffy. He believed our world is made up of complex systems and offered the idea that there is unity through diversity. Our belief is that systems theory includes the natural environment, or in other words, we're not privileging humans over the natural world. So spend a moment looking at this photo. Behind us are the deep woods or west, and in front of us, if the drone were to turn around, you would see the skyline of New York City. This is a network of complex systems at play, most of which we're not aware of, and I am truly humbled by this concept. Next slide we're just going to share is the One Health Initiative. The One Health Initiative is a collaborative, multi-sectoral, and transdisciplinary approach, working at the local, regional, national, and global levels, with the goal of achieving optimal health outcomes, recognizing the interconnection between people, animals, plants, and their shared environment. And this was taken directly from the CDC, but it is a World Health Organization initiative. Similar to the grand challenges for social work and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals put forward by the UN, One Health spotlights interconnectedness and our collective responsibility. Simply put, if any of the systems named, human animals, other than human animals, plants, or the environment are out of balance, then the entire system is out of balance. So the One Health Initiative really rounds out our theoretical framework and undergirds Pony Power's organizational structure as well as its presentation. Okay, you are looking out the window of our indoor riding arena. If you remember from the two slides before, the forest was situated with a ring inside. This is our indoor riding arena. And really, this process is going to highlight the importance of space and place, as well as the need to pay attention to the structure of the human service organization. So now we can move on to our case studies showing the importance and the impact of the natural environment on well-being for the humans, the non-human animals, and the environment. So Pony Power is a peri-urban farm. And that means we sit at the border of an urban and rural land, and at the border of heavily built environments and the natural environment that has been left wild. This is a view looking out from our indoor arena, which is a built structure. And we oriented the view to frame the mountains. Keep this in mind as we walk you through the case studies. You're really good at doing two computers.
Thank you. Okay. Now we're going to look at a study which sought to examine the mental health benefits of spending time in a natural environment, and it did this through a meta-analysis, a formal review of 20 independent peer-reviewed studies that analyzed the previous research to derive conclusions about that body of research. And so it's key to note that all of these studies underwent a rigorous review process and used the same measurement scales to measure anxiety, depression, stress, and anger. What they found across these 20 studies all over the world was that spending at least 15 minutes in a natural environment has significant positive impact on both physical and mental health outcomes, specifically on anxiety, depression, stress, and anger. And that's only 15 minutes. And I feel like that's something that we've all experienced. And this is confirmed by this body of research. There are a number of different explanations provided by the studies that sought to explain why this happens. Some are more theoretical than others, and some are biological. And we pulled a handful of these explanations for you. So one explanation is that humans possess an instinctive genetic bond with nature. That's the biophilia. And another explanation might be familiarity. In over 7 million years of human history, we've spent 99.99% of time in nature.
It's a lot of time.
That's a lot of time. And a third potential explanation is that nature activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the soothing system, endorsing compassion, safety, and connection. It also protects our mental health. And finally, just the fourth of the explanations that we're offering, but there are probably many more, is that nature reduces the level of rumination, which is negative repetitive thoughts linked with mental health problems. And it also it reduces the level of subgenual prefrontal cortex, which is I'm blanking on the endocrine system. So harmful hormones when they're increased that impact our health overall. Okay, and Dana is going to talk to you about our horse friends a little bit.
We would be remiss if we didn't include our horse staff. Sorry,
don't drift.
I'm drifting. I'm getting out of the shot. So we're going to bring the study that addresses our horses' well-being and creating best practices for them. And if we apply our grounding theories, our animal partners need consideration as well. And the reason we brought obviously the horses in is they're part of our team. And what we want to also weave throughout this entire presentation is the constant interplay between our micro, meso, and macro systems. So this study questioned how different horse husbandry styles, and that's basically how we care for domesticated horses, affect horses' physiological levels and thus overall welfare. During the study, 21 horses kept in natural management systems were compared to 26 horses kept in conventional or traditional management systems. Natural management means they were kept outside at least 12 hours a day, able to socialize freely with other horses, were fed mostly forage through the day, were kept unclipped or their hair was kept unclipped, did not wear horseshoes, and bits were not utilized when ridden in their mouths. Conventional management systems mean that horses were confined to stalls at least 18 hours a day where they did not interact with other horses. They were fed 2 or 3 large concentrate meals. Their coats or their hair were clipped, their feet had horseshoes, and they were ridden with bits in their mouths. Conventional management systems are typically seen in developed countries and are often driven by human needs and ignore horses' innate behaviors as social animals. It's important to note that horses are built to eat small amounts of forage up to 18 hours a day to optimize their digestive process. Horses in traditional systems often develop habits out of boredom between meals and can lead to ulcers, metabolic disease, or distress, and stereotypic behaviors. Additionally, adequate movement aids horses in multiple physiological processes, as well as strengthening their physical structure. The results of this study showed that horses in natural management systems had lower levels of cortisol and DHEA, which is a hormone. These hormones are secreted by the endocrine system in stressful situations.
Okay. Back to the humans and perhaps the animals, but this is based around humans now. So for this study, health benefits of a view of nature through the window. It was a quasi-experimental study of patients in a residential rehab center, and researchers sought to examine the health benefits of a bedroom window view to a natural surrounding for patients undergoing a residential rehab program. So the study concluded that an unobstructed bedroom view to natural surroundings appears to have better supported improvement in self-reported physical and mental health during a residential rehab program. Excuse me, 1 second. I'm having technical difficulties. So, okay, let me just repeat myself so we're clear. The study concluded that an unobstructed bedroom view to natural surroundings appears to have better supported improvement in self-reported physical and mental health during a residential rehab program, although the degree of change varied with gender and diagnostic group. For women, a blocked view appeared to negatively influence change in physical health, whereas for men, a blocked view appeared to negatively influence their change in mental health. And pulmonary patients with a panoramic view showed greater improvement in mental health than coronary patients with such a view. So all that is very interesting. But at the end of the day, studies like these help influence the choices that we make at our facilities and in our practice. The perfect example at Pony Power is indoor arena. So these two photos that we used to kind of illustrate this study, the one on they're both of indoor arenas. They're actually, these photos are not from Pony Power, although Pony Power does have an indoor arena window, a lot like the one on the right-hand side. But the one on the left is what you see in a lot of traditional indoor arenas that are used for equestrian sports. The mirror is just like it's used for dancers, so you can check your position and your horse's position. But a lot of indoor arenas, even though they're pretty fancy, it's kind of like riding in a garage, where on the right-hand side, you have an indoor arena, which clearly has tons of bells and whistles, but it also simply has a panoramic window. So think about what that must do for a rider's well-being while they're engaging in equine sports, and maybe even the horse. Okay, so another study to kind of piggyback off of that last one. This one was based on window murals for pediatric patients. And the research objective was to examine the magnitude of impact of 2 nature-themed window murals on physiological processes as measured by heart rate and blood pressure of pediatric patients. And the design of the study was pediatric patients were randomly assigned to one of the 3 room conditions. One was an aquatic window mural, that's the fish in the middle. The one on the right is a tree window mural. That was the second condition. And then there's also the control condition that you see on the left. And the medical data of participants who stayed in rooms were gathered and evaluated for differences. The results of the studies showed that patients in the rooms with murals were found to have improvements in heart rate and systolic blood pressure in comparison to patients in control rooms, suggesting that the murals had an impact on physiological processes. And data also suggested that subject matter played a role, as patients in tree mural rooms had the most positive health-related outcomes. I want to bring attention to the window view. Whether you live in a natural environment or not, these are very accessible ways to include the natural environment at your practice, and it has proven results in producing positive health outcomes. So why not? And now we're going to kind of take it back to the interconnection of space and place and horses and humans. And if we could, it would be really nice to go back to our chat box and enter what this photo is doing for you. What do you notice here? And Patricia, if you don't mind moderating that part.
Sure. Feel
Thank
free to please go ahead and use the chat. We've gotten about 5 more people as joined in the last few minutes. So we're connection, care, gentleness. Yes, the hand on the horse. Oh, the warmth of connection. That's definitely the word for me. Brings me happiness to see how calm they both look through their connection.
Hmm.
The human looks like he's friends with the horse.
Yes, he does. Look at that.
The horse looks pretty calm too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the head's kind of down. It's not like back up. Let's see. Love, trust, companion. Perfect. We have an old saying that there is nothing better for the inside of a person than the outside of a horse. Oh, I love that.
That's
Great.
Winston Churchill said that.
Ah,
Oh my gosh.
excellent,
That's
Richard.
good. Yeah, great quote.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I will.
All right. So yes, this is a great picture. And this was a candid shot. I was in the indoor arena doing something else, and I turn around and I happened to see one of our lovely staff members, Matt, who was exercising a horse in the indoor arena by hand, just stopped and enjoying the view of the outdoors with Pompey. And I was like, wow. So I pulled out my phone and took a picture real quick. But yeah, this really does say a lot. And it's kind of the essence of why I believe it's so great when social work is woven into equine assisted services, and the interconnection of the horse, human, and environmental health are all involved in social work practice. So I think ultimately this photo just shows that Pompey is reaping benefits of looking outside. That's the horse, and so is Matt. So and just a few reasons why before we move into the rest of this presentation, why we believe social work and equine assisted center really lends itself to an interconnection in social work practice is that it's first non-traditional. So it's like a new novel approach, not necessarily new, I shouldn't say that, but it's novel to a lot of people. It's a meso practice, ultimately, even though we have the environment at large, which is more macro, we have the individuals who we cross paths with and work with them in a micro sense, but kind of the system of a farm is very meso. There's a lot of experience to learn, not just as a fieldwork student, but also a social worker practicing here, where there's that nuance between just managing people's experiences at the farm and their physical safety and their emotional safety. You practice a lot of good boundaries. And with those good boundaries, and since we do operate out in the open with animals and people around, things tend not to get too nitty gritty in a technical way. So it lets people kind of do their own thing with the animal and make their session what they want it to be without getting too bogged down with things that they might feel bogged down with outside of pony power in more clinical settings. So those are just some of the reasons that we're so into this, and we're going to continue to share it with you.
All right, so we're going to take you to our farm now. This is the Red Barn, which kind of sits centrally in the middle of our 13-acre campus. And we're going to transition to process because that's really important as well. I live in the world of macro social work. I really like to build and consider big picture. So this is our process of how we got to build our Equine Assisted Services Center, and really how we're considering equine assisted social work as a practice. So our hunch was that the impact of the environment on horses is similar to that of humans. And by carefully considering the environment holistically, we needed to step back and take inventory of what was working and what wasn't. So as a leader of an organization, we had to go macro to do the meso and micro work. We weren't considering the environment carefully up until this point, and a pause and a deep dive was in order to assess the problem, which really is the hallmark of social work practice. So for the past 22 years, our farm and program has been growing. We began as a small 4-acre commercial equestrian property that was previously zoned and grandfathered to house 22 horses. So anyone who is a horse person knows that it's pretty much unheard of. It's not enough land to house that many horses, but that is the urban environment. We started with 1 horse and 4 riders, and now we have 22 horses and ponies and over 200 participants weekly year-round. Demand for services, along with our overuse of the space, became underlying issues that threatened our existence and the expression of our program and mission. We had an ethical dilemma: grow, which would serve more in our community and bring in critical monies or resources, or pause, look and evaluate all the members in our community, including non-human, and create a plan that moves towards restoring balance. So our hypothesis was that if we balance our systems holistically, We model for our community the importance of interconnectedness, collective responsibility, health, and wellness. We are fortunate to have space, an open-minded board and staff, and of course, our horses who connect with humans and guide us back to nature. So now you're looking at another aerial shot of Pony Power. This kind of drills down into the heart of our program. The road is Route 202, which is I think it's an interstate road. It goes from
All the
like
East
Georgia to
Coast,
Maine.
yeah.
That was before the highways. So you're looking at an aerial view of our farm, and I want you to notice the green space. And this was not how our farm looked 7 years ago. So as I mentioned, our farm was really crowded, and the demand for services kept rising, and the farm became busier and busier, and we had to do something. So we fundraised and purchased the adjacent property, which nearly doubled our footprint from 4 to 7.5 acres. And shortly after, an additional 6 acres were free leased in perpetuity, and Pony Power now sits on 13.5 acres. Ironically, doubling our physical space did not result in doubling our program capacity. This is in direct contradiction to capitalistic norms. And that is our message. We argued that doubling the program capacity would have a negative impact on our overall wellness, the humans, the animals, and the environment. Not popular, but long-term, thoughtful, and based on theory, giving humans and animals more space to connect with the environment. And this is where the macro and micro intersect. So the next few slides are just going to bring us through kind of where we were before we moved into our current space, this was our 4-acre lot. And we'd love to, at this point, again, have in the chat room, just some observations that you would have from this slide. And I can cue it up that this is a school group that comes once a week with usually 6 or 8 children. Most of the children need a wheelchair or some device to ambulate. You do notice a ramp to the left of the gray horse that's coming off a bus. But if you don't mind, just put a few words into the chat room of what you see here.
Yeah, I'm going to get it started. I'm so pleased to see a group of people not staring at their phones.
Good one.
Accessible ranch for all abilities. Thank you, Emily. Yes. What else?
So, yeah, and I can share again, this was working at that point. We knew we were kind of stressed because we have cars and horses and children, and there's actually a horse trailer behind there. So not a lot of clear definition between where people go, where we are crowded. And it was requiring staff to manage traffic and then to carefully manage the horses and the humans so that we were safe. So we felt stressed. And again, this is a reflection on our practice. We didn't at the time, we knew we were stressed, but we weren't sure why. But between the cars, a limited space for horses, limited space for people to move safely around horses and cars, we were also really impacting our land negatively and had erosion, which in turn stressed our relationships with our neighbors. We were up high, our neighbors are down low off the hill. And I won't use a profanity, but you know what rolls downhill at a horse farm.
Well, I can tell you what this group is seeing in this picture. They're not seeing that.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Again, and these are the underlying pieces that were causing stress of staff, and that does have an impact on the overall expression of the program. So the next slide.
We got some more responses.
Sure,
I'd like to
sure.
share a couple if we could.
Absolutely.
Curiosity, joy, interest, intersection of nature and humans, community, potential possibilities. I also love the horses holding the attention of the group powerfully.
Wow.
Thank you, Angie. Yes, those are great. Thank you.
So I think that those positive reactions to this photo are, I mean, that's nice to hear. And I think that it really does drive home Dana's point that we were still happy with what we were doing. At the end of the day, we were still able to feel good about the people that we saw and the people who our horses helped. But internally, we were stressed, and so were our neighbors. And so were the families who visited. And we'll get into that a little bit more in the upcoming slides.
So just another shot of another large group. We like to gather. We're social workers. We have beginnings, middles, and endings of every session that we execute. So this is our join up at the beginning where we do a big hello and let people transition and arrive at the farm. And again, I just want some notice to be given to the cars parked 2 and 3 deep. So that had to be managed. And when you work with children and horses and cars, there's stress. Again, people were happy and excited to be at the farm, but we needed to change something. We were growing and we were not considering our space and the impact on all of our systems. Here's another photo of, we incorporate what's called a sensory trail. So when we ride with our clients, we like to take them out of the riding arena because that can be very boring just going around in circles. So we would come out on our driveway. And if you recall from an earlier drone shot, the driveway in front of the property led to a busy county road. But we were out of the ring and we had a different surface that offered a different sound and concussive impact from the horse to the rider. The child that you're seeing on horseback right now is reaching up to try and touch a tree. So there's a lot of input, and we do believe that the proprioceptive and vestibular input that from the change of surface was really important for our clients and fun. It was motivating and fun. So you had the sound of the pavement, you had the sound of cars on the road. It was fun and exciting, but not ideal. So then this slide is showing a before and after. So the slide on the left is just a larger group that we would take out of the ring on a sensory ride or sensory trail. And the shot on the right is after our renovation, which we're going to talk to you about how we arrived at the space where we currently are. And again, we'd love some feedback on the differences between the photo on the left and the photo on the right. What you notice. I'm going to pull up faces. So if you can put that in the chat.
And also, I'm sorry to interrupt our thought process here, but it sounds like some mics are unmuted. If you're not speaking, we can make sure our mics are muted. Thank you.
Okay. The individualized experience on the right, the child is getting a lot more attention on the right. Oh, I like this earthen floor. More staff members per client on the right. No pavement on the right. Less distraction. New fences. Good observational skills here.
Well, that's really important, especially from a field perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so basically you have the driveway on the left versus the sensory trail on the right, and your observations from the group are fantastic. So the sounds, we have the sounds of traffic on the left versus the sounds of nature. You can imagine that. Someone noticed the fences. That was a safety feature, and great noticing that too. We really like to make sure that people are safely enclosed. So, which aside from safety, it's really creating clear and appropriate boundaries for where the riding takes place. We're really trusting and leaning into the biophilia hypothesis. We did a presentation a week or two ago, and someone noticed the dappled sunshine that's coming through on the right, which I thought was beautiful. Some other observations were the way we have a lead walker for our horses, for our clients, the way the lead walker is holding the horse on the left versus the way they're holding the horse on the right. In our world, we call the hold of that rein the smile, where you can almost see a little smile on the rope on the gray horse. So just a different level of potential stress that may have been, nonverbal and occurring because we're on a driveway near a road versus securely in the woods on earthen surface that someone else brought up. That's great. So we do also consider the horses, in nature as a central feature. So the photo on the right, we do believe elevates the experience for all. And we are really uniquely positioned to give many access to horses in nature. And what was also important to point out is that the entire team on the right is benefiting, we believe, from being out in nature. So kind of being under the trees, there's something called forest bathing, walking, interacting with this client, not on pavement. There should be a benefit for everyone, which is pretty nice, especially in the world of burnout in the social work field. All right, so the next photo is just another component of what we call our sensory trail. So we no longer go out on the driveway. That's off the table now. I can't believe we used to do it. Everything is fenced in, but we did make sure that we're in the woods. So here in this photo, we're going to ask you to notice the horses, notice the workers. This is self-care in action. We're moving, we're forest bathing, we're working as a team. And if we refer back to the study where 15 minutes a day in nature can show an increased improvement in mood and anxiety, this is really bringing people in with a clean slate and how much better the experience is for all. Last year, I did conduct a qualitative research study as part of my studies, and one social worker that I interviewed gave a really great comment on when she is working with a client in an office setting. Her client basically gets about 50 or 60% of her best, versus when she's out working in the field with horses and her clients, they're getting 100% of her, because there's a benefit for the social worker. At the same time, there's real bidirectional benefit. There is no need to add or supplement. Just being out in the woods and in nature is beneficial. We are privileging the natural elements and how it activates our senses. And a study conducted in 2018 suggests that equine assisted services provides a holistic framework as social workers incorporate horses and natural environments in practice, which is consistent with systems theory. So why is this so effective for social work field education? Horses and the environments practice self-care continuously. Placing a student in a setting that is bidirectional, or in other words, taking care of all living things, is the essence of social work practice and necessary to build from this foundation, as grounding is a nature metaphor. And then these are just a few more photos to highlight the intentionality behind our planning and building our structures. And again, from a macro perspective, we really had to consider safety and how people move through space. And because our client base at Pony Power is neither diagnosis or age specific. So we have clients as young as 1, as old as into their 90s, and really any diagnosis that you can imagine, as long as we do no harm, is welcome on our farm. So how do people interact with their space? You know, it needs to be nonverbal, it needs to be really clear. So we divided our spaces with a management team, a landscape management team, to clearly define the vehicle traffic on the left, a buffer with green space. The walking path that connects our entire 13.5-acre property is ADA compliant. Then there's another buffer for habitat, and then our riding arena. So really making sure that we're clearly defining our spaces so that they're not only accessible and barrier-free, but there's really clear nonverbal communication of where people can safely be. And just another area to reduce stress. So again, we went from that crowded parking lot in the earlier slide, where we made it work, but this is so much better. We no longer have to dedicate a full-time staff member at full salary to be traffic guard. We took inventory of our property and applied a universal design and accessibility throughout. So now everyone is sharing the space, the bus, or sorry, she advanced my slide.
I mixed up where we were.
No, you're good. You're good. This is just another view of the space that we saw in earlier slides, where we had buses and cars and kids and horses and wheelchairs, and how it's really been clearly defined. So this picture is just defining from our riding arena a school bus that's parked in a proper space, and a horse that knows is in a space that's not close and potentially dangerous with horses, children who are getting ready for their riding lesson. And then we like this photo because there's that nice little blue Subaru mini station wagon. We're an adult rider who is getting out, getting her walker, and she can still arrive rather than, you know, before we had people arrive 2 or 3 minutes before their lesson because lack of space, and then they had to get out right after. So it's allowing for that transition to the farm and then to transition off the farm after. Now you can move the slides. All right. So I take a deep breath when I see this slide. And by our careful renovation and consideration of space and place and privileging the environment, people can come onto the farm, like I said, before a lesson, transition, which is really important for most people, enjoy time on the farm, and then not rush out after. So if we apply the biophilia hypothesis, being in nature has a positive effect. And much like we have to trust the process and assume that there is a beneficial outcome to spending time on or near a horse, we also have to trust the process that our biological imperative to be in nature will have a beneficial outcome. So we, again, choose not to distract from the natural setting, add or build props to our sensory trail. And it's also important to know that this, as you're working in your social work career, you don't have to have such a large scale effort to bring nature in. This was our choice. This is our practice, but we want to show the possibilities. So we're going to suggest that you emphasize and enhance what you have, keep your finger on the pulse of the community needs, and it will ultimately end in better relationships with your clients and your community.
Okay, we are going to touch on how Pony Power went about this type of project. So this is a map that we have posted around the farm, and it's fun to look at and use, but it also makes for a great worksheet for beginner asset mappers, which is what you're about to get into. You can see what works and what doesn't work, where you might want to go and where you shouldn't, where you can find a tree to sit under or an animal to spend some time with. And this is asset mapping. Asset mapping is a critical tool in helping highlight the strengths and weaknesses of your practice, especially if you want to incorporate the environment. So asset mapping is a problem-solving strategy, and social workers love problem-solving strategies. It's our fuel. So as we all know, first identifying problems and also what's going right is the step before strategizing. And strategizing reduces stress, it identifies boundaries and gives us clarity in our communication and what needs to happen. The benefits of this strategy are multi-directional. It improves experiences for clients, staff, and philanthropic, that's a big word, collaborators. So for the next few slides, we're going to bring back the concepts of strengths-based approach, and we just want to highlight the strengths of a person we work with. Just like as we do that, we're going to do the same for our environment. Okay, so this is a great quote by the leader of Regenerative Design Group, which is the landscape. It's a regenerative landscape design group who helped us manage our project. And they said, you can't ever control or overpower your environment. You have to pay attention to it, and it will tell you what it wants to be and what it needs. So, and this is a beautiful picture of a horse who has their ears perked and they're looking, I mean, even though you don't see their body, you can kind of tell that their head is up and they're looking somewhere where they aren't. They're looking out into the distance and taking in what's going on around them. And that's how we also have to pay attention to our clients and our environment. Personally, I think it comes out the most when we're working with children and animals alike. Like they're very authentic about what they want to be paying attention to. And like really just going back to that skill, which is trickier than it sounds, of reading what someone is telling you. Okay.
Okay, so we're going to go through just quickly a little bit of our process, again, getting into the macro piece. Asset mapping, as Abigail said, is the process of identifying and providing information about strengths and resources of a space on a map. For this presentation, we're going to focus on green assets, and that's basically anything that connects humans to the natural environment. So an unmistakable example of a green asset is a nature trail, a tree, a river, while a subtler example could be a window that offers a view, or a beautiful photo or painting. Once your assets are on a map, it can be easier to think about how to build on these assets and address your program or your practice's needs and create best outcomes. So an example is there a concentration of a green asset in one spot? Is it sparse in another? How can we correct this? It's a great visualization tool. So at our center, we noticed that a collection of trees were at the Red Barn, and that became the ideal spot for our nature trail, not the driveway leading out to the county road. So green assets, again, are anything that connect you to the natural world. And if you don't mind scrolling a little bit.
Sure.
Okay, great. So we're going to move on. This was,
Circles.
oh, sorry. The circles are identified on this map as where trees are. So you can see on the upper right quadrant, there's a collection of trees that's by our Red Barn. You can see some of our built structures. So it's really important for us to first identify all the spaces where there were green assets that we might want to consider adding to our space. The next map is just the same drawing, but where we added color. And again, this was a process that took about 9 months for us to survey the land and understand the history and the topography and notice places where there was erosion and where things weren't working and start to make a plan going forward. So it's really easy when you color code. The green spaces are obvious. They are green spaces that we wanted to highlight and figure out how to spend more time in. The blue spaces are pretty heavily trafficked workspaces that are currently working okay, but we really need to pay attention to make sure that we don't overuse or exploit them. And then the red area is spaces that we took out of rotation because the impact was so intense, as you can see from the photos on the bottom left. There was no grass growing. Everything was literally, as we said before, running downhill when we were at risk of losing our space. And the impact was negative on the environment, the habitat, the horses, the humans, and the community alike. So again, just some of the benefits that we observe for the horses. The sensory trail is in a wooded area now. So even when the horses are working, they're still experiencing the benefits of nature. The sensory trail includes a change in terrain, which has been studied, and research has found that horses tend to stay sound or not lame longer when they are regularly exercised on different surfaces. More shaded paddocks where horses go out and play with less erosion are in these paddocks, so horses can always see each other from different angles around the farm. And horses are social animals, and they need to be in the company of another horse. They will panic. So there was a lot of consideration paid to their behavior. From a human perspective, on the map, you can clearly see the trees, and we chose to put benches and sitting areas and green areas of the property to provide accessible experiences with nature. Farm vehicle traffic has clear boundaries to stay out of that space, which does reduce stress for clients, caregivers, and staff. So the horses are benefit, and their clients will too. Imagine the rider on the back of a horse that's much happier, a brighter walk, motivated to walk in nature. And then from the environment perspective, the few green paddocks that were identified through asset mapping are now used thoughtfully so they don't become bare. And in areas of the map where scarcity of beneficial and native plants were identified, we've planted native plants, encouraging the biodiversity that's meant to be. We've added detention basins, vegetated swales, and vegetated berms to help stop erosion and allow for regeneration. And overall, our entire practice is based on indigenous practices of land management, which work. We've moved away from that. We're returning to that. The indigenous practices of land management are time honored and much more efficient than the more slick interventions that we've tried for the past couple of decades. It's my sidebar.
All right. So this is a picture of our Red Barn area where we spend a lot of time with clients. And before we move on to the next part of our presentation, we're just going to take a minute here, and we want you to kind of engage with us on this mindfulness activity. And you can use this photo, or if you're in the space where you work or you're at home and you want to kind of asset map your own space, then you can do that. But, you know,
It's dark.
It's dark out, so you can barely look out your window. Maybe you can. But you can also use this picture. That's my point. It's a backup for your activity here. So you can close your eyes, or you can look at this picture and just imagine the space that you're in. You're sitting, looking at it, admiring it or not, but keep your eyes closed. And we'll stay like this for a minute. What jumps out at you? The good, the beautiful, Bright? Are there rich sounds or smells in this space? Are the good things prominent or are they hidden? Are you noticing them easily? Are you familiar with them? What do you imagine in this space? What might be a good fit if it's not there? A trail? A place to sit? Does it need help, this space? Hold this feeling and take it with you after our presentation today to help you get in the habit of evaluating the space that you're working in. Okay. So, how does this apply to social work field education?
So field education is the signature pedagogy in social work education, meaning it's where students integrate, synthesize, and apply what they learn in the classroom to social work practice in the field. And don't you love all the nature metaphors? Field education, right? Person in the environment, social work in the environment. It's all metaphors for nature. But not all of us have access to the deeply forested green spaces that we traditionally associate with the beneficial effects of nature. So my question is, how can you tap into the same health benefits of nature in your field education? So if you could type in a few responses to what you may have in your field education placement. I'm assuming everyone's in field work. Just a few thoughts about
Your green assets.
Your green assets.
Or if you could imagine them, what might they be? What would make it better?
I think there's some thinking going on. I'm not seeing anything yet in the chat. Okay. Looking out the window on a regular basis. Just having that window is so important. I remember my first field placement, there was no window. It really did make a difference to go to work in the dark and come home in the dark and never see outside.
I always brainstorm looking out the window.
Me too. I need that window to distract me for a while. Slow me down.
We presented recently at a conference in St. Louis, and they put us in the basement with no windows. It's just so ironic. So we actually infused the room with different sensory experiences. We had a diffuser with cedar wood, and we had this nature sounds, and we brought hay with us to St. Louis, and people had a chunk of hay handed to them as they walked into the space, just to connect senses.
That's great. So having some time out in the fresh air too, just getting out, and I can just feel myself calming down as I'm imagining myself breathing fresh air.
Right.
Mhm.
All right. So we're going to hear from two of our interns. We did videotape 2 interviews because we knew it would be dark out now. And we wanted to make sure that you got to see our 2 interns, Zori from Rutgers and Morgan from Ramapo. They're going to share a little bit about their experiences and the consideration of the environment as it relates to their field education. So we're going to cross our fingers that this is going to play.
The sound played at the beginning.
Oh, good.
That was shocking. So these videos must work.
Okay.
Hi, could you share your name?
My name is Zoraida Rogers Rivera.
And can you tell us in what capacity you're here at Pony Power?
I am here as the 2022-2023 Social Work Director's MSW.
Thank you. And can you tell us a little bit about your goals for field education?
My goals coming into field education were to find a place that really bridged my previous learning experiences coming from the veterinary medicine field and the animal behavior field with the world of social work, and how to bridge that gap between human interaction and the human animal bond.
Thank you. And can you tell us a little bit about what this placement or how this placement brings social work concepts, specifically the core competencies for field education, into your learning?
So I feel that this placement really allows a social work intern to apply all of the core competencies holistically and with enough hands-on experience to work it with individuals, but also in a community, utilizing your background and your space like nature and these guys. And also to look at the larger piece in terms of access, and it really gives you a full scope of where you can apply your goals in social work all around this.
Terrific, thank you. And if you don't mind just sharing the component of field education at a nature-based facility and what that does for you personally.
I think that field education in nature was something that I really dreamed of doing coming into social work. I think providing support for folks using this setting was something that I really prioritized and what I saw myself doing in the future. I think that nature and animals both give the opportunity to engage in a way that you don't see in more formal or clinical settings such as hospitals and offices. It's really a different frontier, and it provides a whole new level of experience for me as a growing practitioner as well as my clients.
Thank you. Could you speak a little bit more about the interactions that you're having as an emerging social worker here at a nature-based setting?
Here, I've been really lucky to experience groups at all different levels, as well as individuals at all different levels. So I've been able to work from young children, ages 1 to 3, through adulthood and late adulthood, all different kinds of ages and stages, as well as different abilities, different levels of verbalization, and different entry levels in terms of their animal experience as well. So teaching folks about the environment and about animals at all different places that they're coming in and really meeting them where they're at here has been really incredible to get handled.
Thank you. So when you hear the concept person in environment, how does that apply to your fieldwork education here at Pony Power?
I think that this is a wonderful place to explore the person environment theory. This is the best place to realize and to work on the idea that no one lives in a bubble. Not only are we dependent on our family structures and our communities, but also the physical environment in which we live and the opportunities that we have around us in terms of our access to green space, our access to connection with different species, and also connecting with different species in a way that builds community. And you can see that when you apply person and environment theory in
Hi,
Oops. Hang on.
could you share your name?
my name.
So that was Zori. She had a hot stop on the last one. And now we're going to hear from Morgan. Interestingly, Morgan did her macro field placement as a BSW student and now is back as for her MSW doing her generalist practice. Hi, can you tell us your name and your affiliation here at the farm?
My name is Morgan Aronoff, and I am an MSW intern here at Point Power from Brownfield College.
Thank you so much. Morgan, can you also tell us, is this your first experience with field education at Pony Power?
This is my second. I also did my macro practice internship as a BSW student at Brownfield here at Point Power.
Fantastic, thank you. Can you share a little bit about what that experience from the macro perspective was like here during your BSW?
Yes, so the macro experience is very different. I had the opportunity to work in the development office and learn about fundraising, about networking, about the importance of our community relationships, and then being able to have our programming and the importance of networking with our community relationships.
Thank you. And can you tell us a little bit about what being on a farm and working with live animals and individuals is like from it's not really typically what you think of as a macro practice, but can you describe that experience a little bit?
Yes, so I think that being on a farm and being in this environment, you get a very different perspective. I think that it allows you to really see the importance between the bridge of what we do on a macro level to what we're able to do on a micro level.
Do you mind just speaking a little bit more about that, the bridge between macro and micro?
Absolutely. So I think that being able to have the opportunity to be involved in a macro level internship really helped me to understand how we're able to deliver services, to bring people to the farm, the connection between what needs to be done at a macro level and within our community to provide services directly to clients at a micro level.
Thank you so much. And can you share a little bit about what social work ethics values, the code of ethics for fieldwork practice, how that's displayed or highlighted at a farm?
So I think that being on a farm and working with animals just provides an amazing opportunity to really see the core competencies and the code of ethics in play. I think that the animals provide us with, they really help with the power of differentiation. And I think that they make it so that when you're working with a client in this kind of setting, it creates just a very even tone. And I think that the animals allow us to do that with our clients.
Thank you so much. And who are you standing there with right now
I'm standing here with Ned and John.
when you're next to these horses?
I think that it just is good for the soul is the best way I can think of it. And Ned too. I think that being able to work with animals is such an amazing opportunity, but I also think that it has such an impact on our work with clients. You have to be present and you have to be alert, but you also have to be in the moment. And I think that because they mirror us so greatly, it allows us to be in the moment, it allows our clients to be in the moment, and it just creates a really amazing opportunity.
Thank you so much. When you're next to these horses.
I think that it just
Okay.
that
Hang on.
Hi,
I'm
can you
getting
tell-
out of these slides?
Tell us your name.
Yep. Okay. We've arrived.
All right, so we would love to kind of bring it back to the attendees and talk about maybe some of what they observed in the videos, what they noticed. And Zori and Morgan have graciously agreed to take questions since we're assuming there are students in the crowd, and
Great.
what better way? And actually, Abigail's a former student,
Yeah, I
so
can help
love
with some
to
of those
open up,
questions.
some questions.
I love this picture.
Vinny on the left and Cece on the right.
Aw.
I have a question. What is it about horses? We know that people bond with their cats, their dogs, but this seems to be something special about horses. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Great question.
I would love to talk about that. Again, I have 3 dogs of my own. I'm a dog lover, and Zori is also a dog trainer, a handler. The difference between dogs, cats, and horses are dogs and cats are predators. That is their behavior. Horses are animals of prey, which humans are as well. So they have more of that fight or flight response. Horses are not naturally aggressive, but they're fiercely protective of their pursuit of basic needs, of their safety, and of their herd. They cannot live in isolation. So they really closely align human behavior. Their body language is going to respond when they feel safe, they're going to relax. When they don't feel safe, they're going to be stressed, and they're going to try to restore that balance. So when you're next to a horse, if your heart rate is up or your cortisol level is, you're kind of on fire, the horse is going to react and yield away from that until you can bring that back down. They'll help you regulate if you're dysregulated. So there's just something really amazing about the nonverbal communication between a horse and a human that's different from a dog or a cat. And that's why it's so helpful with populations. You hear often the veteran population, those managing PTSD, kind of that nonverbal, body language, immediate reaction from the horse is going to be, if you're coming in stressed, the horse will back away. You can go back, take a deep breath, and try to regulate. That horse will then approach. So it's that simplicity of really we're aligned in our pursuit of basic needs and basic health and happiness.
It's really great. I'm going to interrupt real quickly. Can we stop sharing the slides so we can be more together?
Yep.
And then I see so I got a hand raised and some things are coming in the chat too, which is great. And if people want to speak, I'm going to call on Angie, let her talk. Feel free to share your screen and talk. So Angie?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been an awesome presentation. I really appreciate all the information and the ability to share too. I like being able to comment on the slides very much. My question is this: my current field placement is going to transition into a permanent position for me after graduation. And I work with grievers. We do groups, but then we also do individual sessions. Everyone in the center has been brought to the center through a major life transition. I do have the ability with someone that I just met, who's not a clinician. She's just an absolute awesome human being and a horse lover. And she opened up a nonprofit called Stable Minds right here in Monmouth County. So I'd have the ability to go to her like in a field trip type fashion with some of my group members. Can you speak to a bit on the impact of a one-off interaction with a nature-based facility and then going back into a more clinical setting, the impact of that as opposed to having your permanent residency at a nature base that I wouldn't have the ability to do at this point, but would it be possible to receive the same benefit to client in these one-off field trip type settings?
Shall I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent question.
That's a great question. Because and I can kind of see what you're getting at, where the consistency of spending more time and on a regular basis, it's that routine that might be beneficial. But I would say also the field trip model is still good because the person is getting that 15 minutes outside in nature. They're still going to be having that social interaction with an animal, and then also something's going to come out of it, whether it's a learning experience or something that came up for them. And then you can take it back to your office with you. And actually, for my field work, I did 1 year here that was more clinical. And I had a psychiatrist who was my supervisor for field work. And I did do, well, in order to protect client safety and privacy, I would do a equine assisted service session in the barn where we were grooming, spending time with the horse, but we wouldn't get into anything in the barn. And then we would actually go into an office away from nature, really, and then debrief and process what happened out there. So yeah, in my experience personally, I would say that there is a lot to be taken away after just a one-off.
I'm going to add to that too, that, you may see, or you may connect differently with that group by being on the farm and not getting heavy into grief, where you're seeing strengths, you're connecting on a nonverbal level, and you might notice something in a client or a group member that you wouldn't have noticed in a built structure. So I think, we've heard it mentioned that there's grist for the mill. It's a social lubricant. You're out, you're experiencing, and as Morgan said in her video, that power differential is balanced when you're out on the farm together with your clients. I think it's fantastic. And in the research that I'm doing, it really sits beautifully in being that complementary alternative modality with social work. We don't practice at this moment in time. We don't offer traditional primary therapy here. We really see it as adjunctive because some people also just need to make that connection. Zori mentioned earlier that, you really are truly connecting with someone, and the animal as the intermediary is helping people lean in, trust, and experience something authentically. Just make sure it's a safe place. That's my only recommendation to you. Just look at it carefully and make sure there are really good safety boundaries up.
It's great. There's a great question from Emily that's perfect for Morgan. What is the typical day like for a BSW intern there? I'm a junior now and trying to figure out what type of internship I am interested in. I have grown up on a small farm and love the idea of working with people and animals.
Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for your question. So a typical day as a BSW intern in a macro setting looked like just being very involved in what was going on fundraising wise and what was going on in order to do those bigger macro pieces to get what we needed to provide those micro services. So I was really lucky to be able to be involved in our fundraising, in preparing for our events that we were able to do to bring people on the farm in order to engage people in our services that we provide to clients. And so I would say that most of those smaller pieces that go into being able to provide those services is what you would be doing in your day-to-day.
Great. What other questions are out there?
I see a hand up from Angie.
Angie, I think she asked her question. She didn't put her hand down. While we're waiting for more questions to kind of percolate, tell us about the horses that you have. They're just not just run-of-the-mill horses. They're special horses, right? They've found the farm. Tell us about your horses and the goats. Zori, tell us about the goats.
All right, Zori, you go first and tell about the goats. And I'm going to shout out to my daughter who's in the crowd.
Oh,
Who's a
yay.
newly minted MSW from Hunter and works in foster care. License.
Oh, wonderful. Welcome.
Yes.
That's great.
So the goats are
Anyway.
Exactly.
They're more important.
The goats, we have 3 goats. They're all males. 2 of them are a La Mancha goat, which is a dairy breed. So they look really tall. Those are the 2 guys that were kind of jockeying for a spot, giving us their bums throughout that video. And they're traditionally dairy. They don't have the big udder because they're not female. Those are Fred and George. And then the third one, the small one, is a different breed. A smaller meat breed named Nicholas, and they're all seniors, and I believe they were either rescued or donated. So they came to us either midlife or later in life. They're up there in age, but they're doing really well, and they love to get fed by all participants. They've recently really bonded with the smallest Pony Power participants that we have, ages 1 to 3. They'll take leaves right from their hand. They love a good scratch on the neck. And they just have a blast hanging out with us.
That's great.
So the horses are very special. Thank you for noticing that. They have to meet criteria. There's no special training for a horse in a therapeutic riding center, but kind of like humans, we assess first their personality and their temperament. And that's really something that you can't change. So they either have it or they don't. So calm, engaging, you have to kind of use your sense of your feel, how they make you feel. And then there are some more technical aspects of what's called their conformation or the way they're built. So we match from the macro perspective, we have to look at our client roster. And because we have children and adults, we need a variety. So the way a horse is built and their conformation will determine the movement that's going to be offered to the rider. So when the rider is sitting on the back of a horse in a therapeutic riding session, they're borrowing the neurological functioning of the horse for that time. So if someone needs a lot of input, we're going to put them on a horse that might be a little bit narrower, that has a lot of input from the horse and then the ground. And conversely, if you need someone who just needs that warm, rhythmic kind of opening of the hip and just lumbering around, the build of the horse is going to determine that. So the first order of business is their temperament and their personality. The second is their build or the way they're put together, and then as well as height. And then the third is how they manage the stress of our sessions, because you saw there's usually a 3-to-1 ratio for every rider. So they have to be comfortable with a rider who might not have balance or might have, we can't manage joy. We don't want to manage joy. So you might have squeals and you might have, people just bursting out spontaneous joy. Those horses have to be able to tolerate that. So it's a combination. And what's really neat is most of our horses are donated or rescued. So it's a really eclectic mix, and they tend to be older, which also is a great learning opportunity, that there is a purpose for all living beings. There is no waste in nature. And it just is fun to just have that variety. And they all have personalities.
Wow. That is true. Arlene Hunter from the School of Social Work. This is so wonderful. Thank you. I grew up on a dairy farm, and I remember asking my folks for a horse for my birthday, and I was told no horses because they don't produce milk and they just take up, space and hay, and we're not going to get anything from them. But I've always been fascinated by horses. But I know people are afraid of them. And for people who are afraid or maybe too old or unable to actually get on a horse, is it just being in the presence and touching, being in contact? Is that what's important, or is it really best to ride a horse? It seems like a silly question, but
Not a silly question.
Great question. I love the smiles on these faces.
So first, I mean, there's great value in equine assisted services that aren't mounted. And we're big on those here because people are in a lot of ways right to be afraid of horses. They're
It's a good quality,
unfamiliar.
right.
They're large animals. They're
Yeah.
so different from us. Their eyes are on different parts of their heads than ours. Like they look really different. We have kind of a disconnect when we're looking at them. It's not like looking at another human. So when someone is afraid of a horse and they're coming here, it's okay, because that first encounter or the first 6 or 10 encounters, that's still valuable, and giving that person the validation that they're right. It's okay to be a little bit nervous. And that's exactly what the horse would do, meeting a new person that they're not sure of. They're going to take care of themselves, make sure that they feel good about what they're doing. And then once that foundation is built, then we can go somewhere else. But you can't do that until you've arrived and you feel safe, and safety is our number one thing. And we never, ever compromise that.
And riding is not indicated for everyone. So you might have, you saw some of our riders who are in wheelchairs. We're a 22-year-old organization. And some of our clients have been with us for almost all that time. So they're maybe moved from early childhood to adulthood, and riding might not be indicated anymore. It might be contraindicated. There's still a benefit. Someone who might be a victim of interpersonal violence and touch, and it's really provocative to put someone on a horse. You're in, when we're helping people stay on. So it just might not be the right experience, but managing your body in space next to a horse and joining with that animal and moving through space safely has tremendous benefit.
And can I add one
Of
more thing?
course.
Also, the safety and the emotional safety of our staff and our volunteers. If we're working with someone who wants to do therapeutic riding and it's just not going to be an appropriate match, whether it's they say things that might make volunteers uncomfortable, maybe certain staff members not trained to handle that. Not everyone is a social worker. Or also physical safety. Sometimes our riders are bigger, and if it's just not going to pan out in a good way for anyone involved, or even just one party involved, then
It's okay.
we're going to show them the way of having these positive experiences on the ground.
And
with
the
horse.
last piece I'll just add is we also have developed curriculum that's in line with the Department of Developmental Disabilities. So we can do life skills training and attention to daily living skills as a parallel process. This is how we take care of our horse. It's the same thing every single day. But what a great way to break down and deconstruct what it's like to eat on a schedule, to have a clean space, to have exercise, to have grooming or hygiene. And that's probably even more valuable than the riding. So there's really benefit to all.
Richard's got a question.
Thank you, and good afternoon to all. This has been quite informative and enjoyable, to say the least. I also was raised on a dairy farm not too far from Rutgers campus, right on Washington Avenue in Piscataway, is where I was first introduced to horses and cows and farm animals at a very early age. And it's pretty much saved my life, I raise horses here in New Jersey to this day, and I use the horses to provide comfort to people in the inner cities, which we do quite a bit. My question is, I attended the Zoom meeting on Saturday, and I learned about the different certificate programs that are being offered. I'm considering coming in for the MSW program in the fall. And I was wondering, is there going to be an equine therapy certificate available? And that's my question.
I was, we,
Question.
Dr.
No.
Finley?
Yeah.
we don't have a certificate in that, but there's other ways we can definitely get you that experience. And I see our time is coming to, I knew it was gonna go quick, and it did go quick. I want to put a plug in, first of all, that Pony Power takes volunteers, but there's a program for that, and they are up north in the Bergen County area. I was going to have you guys put an email address in the chat, so if someone wants to reach out to you directly about the program, they could do that. But also, if you have questions about, can I do field in this area? How do I create a program? I'm going to encourage you to connect with Arlene Hunter, and then she can help you connect with people like me and like the advisors and other faculty, that we can be creative and think about like an area of emphasis and get you the experience that you might get that doesn't involve a certificate, to really encourage you to
Interns
think
at
about
Pony
it.
Power with horse experience. So Richard, we'd love to speak with you
Yeah,
further.
I mean,
And
Yeah.
Richard, we could really make your
I was going to say, yes.
resume stand out differently, and you and I could talk cows. I'll put
Yes.
my email address in the chat.
And I'd
Thank
have fun helping to create that area of emphasis to really get what you
Yes.
need.
We can absolutely get you what you want, Richard.
Awesome. Thank you very, very much. I feel at home now.
I'm so glad. Yeah, and I was going to offer to every student here that I'm hoping you're all thinking outside the box now and realizing how big social work can be. It can be what you want it to be. So that's why I told them earlier, Zori, you're kind of like a niece to me, so I've already claimed you. But I spoke with Zori before she joined the program, before she came to the MSW program, about what social work can be. And she actually helped me think more outside the box. Our conversation was very helpful that day. And dream, whatever you want help with, come find us and talk to us. And Dana is a living example of going over her DSW. So
Great.
And Rutgers has been super supportive, and we hope to develop a model for equine assisted social work. I think there's interest, and it's exciting.
But I'll give a shout out to Hunter, to Ramapo, to all the other schools, we're all friends. We all get together. The head of the MSW program at Ramapo was one of my doctoral students. I know the people at Seton Hall and the one at Monmouth. So we all work together. So it's social work. Like Richard said, we're part of a family, all kind of coming together as a community. But Dana, thank you so much. This has been so informative. And I thank everybody who's been here. We had people who joined and had to leave, but it's been wonderful.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
And thanks to our team, Morgan and Zori.
thank you so much.
Thanks to Sydney, and she's got interesting
Yes.
work. And one more shout out to one of your other students, Alessandra Thomas, who
She
was
was an intern here.
she was an intern last year with us.
I
and she,
thought I recognized her name.
and
Okay.
she's helped us put together these presentations. She's another superstar. So
Excellent.
Rutgers is cranking out some
We have a
great
good
people.
crew.
Yeah. Yay, social work.
Great social work.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording. I'll send you this link once we play with it for just a little bit. Where did my screen? So here I can go stop recording right there.
Thanks, everyone. Really wonderful. Very interesting.
Yes, this is